Good evening, everyone. It's Joshua here. I'm kicking back on this nice evening, enjoying a moment of quiet. Everyone's asleep. It's kind of late, so I thought I'd come out and make a quick video. But knowing me, it probably won't be a quick video. But I think that that's the beauty of it. You know, you don't have to watch it. I was thinking it's just going to be one of millions and millions of videos filed away in the internet world that could be totally just poof, the drop of a hat. Like so many things, it's a fragile system, the internet. If you keep everything you own on your computer and have no hard copies, you're you're taking some big risks. But I was thinking earlier about how people act towards one another when they're feeling threatened and when their ideals are threatened. And I'd really try to be fair in my day-to-day activities. I try to treat people with fairness and kindness, and I try not to I try to follow the golden rule, I guess, if you will. And the golden rule doesn't seem to apply for a lot of people. It was funny, actually, when I was walking to the store, and I don't like to stereotype or generalize too much, but it is what it is. I tend to notice that people who park in spots that they shouldn't park tend to have nice cars. When it comes to like parking in a parking lot in a spot, and this may be just something that I've noticed, but it made me think about people. It was this really nice, newer car, and it was parked kind of in a spot where you shouldn't park. It wasn't interfering with anything, but it was kind of like this, haha, well, it was a real estate place. It was probably one of the agents, and it's not a big deal that they parked there. It just got me thinking about how many times I've seen that. Just like the guy who's hauling ass down the freeway because he has a Mercedes and he's got his foot to the metal. But as soon as I say that, the first thing that comes to mind is to realize that I'm interpreting that through my paradigm. And I know that there are probably just as many, let's say a person who drives a really nice car may be more prone to notice all the shitty people, or people with shitty cars that are driving fast. Because I know there are just as many. And I accept that I do see through my own particular net. And just like the rest of you. And I gotta turn this down real quick. I hate it when that's why I don't play the radio. That's exactly why I don't play the radio. Listen to some smooth jazz and they come on and start talking. It's like, man, come on. So anyway, I don't like to gripe about people in general, but it is what it is. We live in a world of idealists, and everyone, I think, should be an idealist to the extent that we have an idea of what we would like to see the world be like, Because if we don't have some sort of an idea, then, what are we working towards, right? It doesn't mean we have to have all the answers, but have an idea. And that's idealism. So the ideal world to live in is going to be different for each person. So, I accept that people are different. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that we don't have the right to gripe about people who, are inappropriate or, the bad elements of society, There's lots of them. I have my own idea of what those, that element is, and each person's going for their own cause and their own reality, and it's pretty stupid to step up and say, I'm right and you're wrong, but we do it all the time, we all carry the chip on our shoulder a little bit, and for some, it's to the extreme, and this is what I really wanted to talk about, was people, some folks just, they just go ballistic when confronted with any form of logic or reason that conflicts what they think or believe. It's strange, you know. I've seen people defend some of the craziest ideas, and you know, it's not that a person shouldn't have the right to believe what they want, but it's that the people don't tend to get fussy until you really confront them on it, you know, and ask them, you know, or if you don't buy into an argument and just say that, and this is the part that really gets me, is when you just say, well, that's the way it is, I think this and you think that, and people get all pissed about it. And I'm not even talking at all about religious discussions here. That's a totally different world. Scientific discussions about like where we are in the scientific world. You know, people will say, oh, well, we've discovered this and we've discovered that. And it's like, well, no, that's a theory. You know, that's not something that's been proven. And they'll say, well, you know, it's the best that we have. And it's like, that's the problem. That's the arrogance, is to think that we just have to have the answer for everything, you know. It's like we can't be happy to just say we don't know. And, you know, that's good and bad at the same time, because I'd say it's more bad than good, but so many of the ideas that we've had in the past have been consistently challenged through time. And when I hear people defending points that don't have any validity, it's like, why? But it's not a matter of, you know, because that's why I mentioned idealism first. We have ideals, so we have an idea of what we want it to be like. Therefore, we're going to stand up for certain beliefs that we have, and that's fine. What happens is that people don't really get fussy until they're confronted or conflicted, you know, within the situation, like asked a particular question that can't be answered, you know, about it. And when a constructive argument's going on, there's nothing wrong with that. But people start taking it personal when you attack ideas. And that's the root of it, you know? It's like, there's nothing wrong with standing up for whether you believe in a theory or a god or a political ideal. It's fine to stand up for that and be realistic and say, well, this is why I believe this. And they'll say, well, this is why I believe this. I mean, political arguments go on all the time. But in the end, people start getting pissed off at each other and they start taking it personal. In other words, rather than saying, well, your political party's fucked, you know, they'll say, well, you're saying I'm fucked, you know, that I'm taking that personal because that means that the values that I hold towards this political party, let's say a left and right winger are arguing, you know, and the liberal guy's like, you know, I just don't like conservatives because they're mostly a bunch of, you know, self-righteous assholes that support big business. And then the other guy just starts taking that really personal by saying, well, you know, I'm not like that, I'm not like that. And the person might not even be accusing, you know, all conservatives of being that way, but just by generalizing a political party, a person will take that as, you know. And the same thing happens with religion. If a person says, well, you know, a lot of Christians are like this, then one Christian might get really offended by it, even if they're not that way. And that has implications on both sides because, you know, really we shouldn't generalize anyway. But when a person does generalize, you know, it's easy to do. The other person should step back and realize that it's not always against them directly. They're just expressing their views of why they're angry. For example, I've had religious arguments with people, you know, discussions. I don't see them as really arguments, but, you know, we go back and forth with various people over years. I mean, and in the end, we always walk away shaking hands usually, but realizing that each person still has a particular, I don't know, their own value system, and to respect one another. I guess I don't even want to get into religion. That's a totally different world. But I was really thinking about scientific ideals here, because the paradigms that we've created are based on so many years of often bullshit that we've been fed, to keep us from figuring out that, big business is out to fuck us all for their own money and their own gain. And that's nothing new to us, in modern day, that doesn't surprise any of us who are hanging out talking, on YouTube. We all know that we're being screwed by the corporations, but it wasn't always that way, you see. There was a time when the company was your friend. There was a time when the company gave you jobs, and it helped to, machines helped to, labor-saving devices. These weren't always bad things. And there was a time when people looked upon industry as being a saving grace, and that's quickly changing. But it's not going to change quick enough. I mean, people have very different opinions on what's important. And progress seems to be kind of the motivational factor for a lot of people. But I always ask the same question: what exactly is progress? Progressing towards what? But anyway, as the times change, we kind of have to change with them. And I think we're doing that well. I mean, recycling wasn't anything when I was a kid, and now it's it's just common. Kids growing up today with recycling, they just recycle. It's just common. When the best we had when I was a kid was I lived in Oregon, so we'd take back the bottles and cans because we get 5 cents a piece. Take them back and get some munchies or something. But if it weren't for that, we'd just throw them in the garbage probably. A lot of bottles and plastic jugs, everything went in the garbage in the 80s, and so times do change. But I guess I was watching something earlier. They were talking about how we'd been lied to for so long by the lead industry, because they wanted to keep it in gasoline, and people would stand up behind this one scientist, the one scientist who kept lead in legal for decades after they'd already discovered and someone had already said that it's bad and that it's harming our environment, it's harming the people, and people continue to support mainstream science because the person with the most expertise is always the one that we fall back on. Oh, well, this guy's the world expert in this. All that means to me is that they're that much more liable to be full of shit. The more money, the more fame, the more respect a person has, it's almost like they've lost a lot of credibility with that. And I know that's not fair, because just because a person is very famous doesn't mean that they're not honest. But it does mean that they have obligations often to please certain individuals, companies, corporations, governments, families, whatever it may be, to where they compromise their values and integrity. And if anybody speaks out against it and says this person did this, then they're just considered a liar or an outcast, and that's not fair either. But that's when the little guy speaks out against the big guy. He always gets shut up, and that's why some of these theories don't really get heard, because it's like science. Everything's ridiculed at first, and then it's looked at curiously, and then it's eventually accepted. All theories have been ridiculed at first. They wouldn't even look through a telescope when it was presented to the bishops. They said it must be a flawed instrument if you see what you think you see. And those kind of attitudes have kept us down for so long. I'd like to see us move forward into my ideal society. Whatever that may be. I'm joking, of course. I don't have an ideal. In other words, this is kind of where I'm coming from. I feel like I live in the ideal society, minus a few bad apples. A few major corporate interests, but that's for another time. I'm running out of time, so namaste, everybody. Have a good night.